Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the Bill of Rights of Racially Mixed People written by Maria Root. If you're new to this channel, this is Tech to Therapy, where I talk about my transition working in startups and now becoming a therapist. And I talk about a lot of random other things like weightlifting and my experience being mixed race. And so this is one of those random other things, is my series on being mixed race. And so today I'm gonna do a little brief history on where Maria Root decided to, or like why Maria Root decided to write this piece of work. I'm gonna read the Bill of Rights of Racially Mixed People, and then I'm gonna conclude with some of my thoughts and how I resonate with this piece of work. So let's get started on the brief history. So I did a little bit of digging, and here are some facts that I just did not know, or I didn't piece together until I read this. Did you know that it was only 55 years ago, approximately, that all 50 states in the US legalized interracial marriage? It was only 55 years ago. Isn't that wild? Like, this really hasn't been a thing that has been a part of our US history. Yeah, when it was first legalized, obviously there were a lot of confusion and opposing ideas on how mixed race people should identify, which is like so problematic now in our day thinking about it, because like, why is there somebody else telling us how we should identify? Okay, but anyways, Dr. Maria Root decided to write this around 30 years ago. So this is like pretty new relative to other things in history, pretty new piece of work. I just had never heard about this before. And when I read it, I was like, this is so spot on. This is so spot on. Like, I feel like there's a lot of wounding that is similar for mixed race people. And I feel like she really hit it on the spot with this work that she wrote. So I'm gonna read it for you. So I'm gonna bring my computer here. Okay, so the Bill of Rights for Racially Mixed People by Dr. Maria Root. I have the right not to justify my existence in this world, not to keep the races separate within me, not to be responsible for people's discomfort with my physical ambiguity, not to justify my ethnic legitimacy. I have the right to identify myself differently than strangers expect me to identify myself differently than how my parents identify me, to identify myself differently than my brothers and sisters, to identify myself differently in different situations. I have the right to create a vocabulary to communicate about being multiracial, to change my identity over my lifetimes and more than once, to have loyalties and identify with more than one group of people, to freely choose whom I befriend and love. So that is the Bill of Rights for Racially Mixed People. And I just feel so heard in some of these different phrases. I'm just gonna point out the ones that like really stand out to me personally. This part about not being responsible for people's discomfort with my physical ambiguity. That is like, I needed to hear that as a child, and other people need to realize that I am not responsible for their discomfort, because it's so common for people who are monoracial, from my experience, be like, oh, okay, so what are you? What do you identify? They want to know so badly what my race is because they can't identify it because I'm ambiguous. And so I've always felt the need in the past to be like, oh, I'm this and this. Yeah, here you go. Like, let me provide you the information that you need so you feel better about the fact that like you don't know what I am. And it's only recently that I feel like I have more agency in this, and I sometimes don't disclose. They'll be like, oh, like, I don't know what race you are. Okay, they won't say that. Well, no, they will say that. I have people be like, so what are you? And I'll just be like, I don't know, I'm just like a mix of things. And I won't answer it because why do I have to answer you? That's a very personal question. And so I only answer when I want to these days. This part also, I have the right to identify myself different in different situations. I feel like that's something that monoracial people like don't understand in my experience. Like, depending on who I'm surrounded by, the phase in my life, what I'm going through, like literally so many factors, I'm gonna identify differently. And I still definitely have a part of me that's like, oh, once I have an identity, I shouldn't change it. Like, that, what am I doing changing it? Does it mean that I don't really know who I am? I definitely still have that part in me, and probably I project that onto others when they're like, I don't know. But anyways, it feels so good to know that that's okay to change my racial identity, because I honestly feel like I have, like, many times, depending on where I lived, for sure, I think I identified differently. And so it's just good to really know that there's like flexibility, and that's okay. Just like affirmation, that's fine, and that's like normal and expected, and like it's not an experience that many monoracial people have, and that's why it feels very uncomfortable for me to be switching my racial identity. And then about this part, I have the right to identify myself differently than strangers expect to identify. Oh my gosh, I have experienced so many times when people, strangers, friends, are like, but aren't you blank? You know, like invalidating the racial identity that I hold for myself. Or like, you're not this enough, or you're not that enough, or aren't you supposed to be this? Or no, I don't think you're that. So many times have people done that to me. And I hear about it in other papers, in other academic papers about mixed race people, and so it's like nice to see it on here, and just like it's a reminder that like literally this happens to us so often, and like, can it please stop? Can it please stop? Yeah. And then lastly, I have the right to create a vocabulary to communicate about being multiracial. This one's interesting because I think this was written at a time where there were like no academic papers on mixed race identity and mixed race identity formation. And I think this was created to, this kind of like began that conversation. And so I think there's much more vocabulary now to talk about mixed race identities. I think because being mixed race, multiracial, does mean that there's like a little bit of a difference in the way that we talk about race. For example, I've never heard monoracial people use the term monoracial, because it's just like in everything that they live, that's like the norm. Not make it like the other by calling someone mixed race. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it did. Anyways, that is kind of what I thought about this work. I am so glad that this was written, and I'm glad that I've read it, and I think it would have been so helpful for me to have read this as an adolescent, because I think there are lots of things on here that I kind of knew, but like didn't really know that I could like rely on. For example, to keep the races separate within me for the longest time, and I definitely still do keep the races separate within me, and it's an ongoing thing to kind of like blend those together, to allow that to be blended together within me. Yeah, so I'm just like glad that I came across this just like literally coincidentally while I was reading other academic papers on mixed race identity formation. I'm so curious if any of you have heard about this Bill of Rights before, because they never talked about it in school. Literally, I have never seen this anywhere else except for this random rabbit hole that I was digging myself into, and I came across this, and it's so helpful. It's so nice. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you've like seen this before, what you think about this. Maybe this doesn't resonate with you at all. I'm just curious, because like literally I have nobody to talk about with this, so like please comment below, because I want to have a conversation with you about this. Bye.